Tonight's video is going to be on giving up. Um, the scripture that I've chosen for that is Nehemiah 4, verses 6 through 14. And it says, "So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half its height, for the people worked with all their heart. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs, the Ammonites, and the people of Ashdod heard that the repairs to Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead, and that the gaps were being closed, they were angry. They all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, 'The strength of the laborers is giving out, and there is so much trouble that we cannot rebuild the wall.' Also our enemy said, 'Before we know it, or it sees us, we will be right there among them, and will kill them and put an end to the work.' Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, 'Wherever you turn, they attack us.' Therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall, at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, 'Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord, who is great and awesome, will fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes.'" Now, every once in a while in life, we all reach a point where we're ready to just throw in the towel and give up. We're tired, we're frustrated, we're exhausted, we feel like there's just no use in continuing to try. Whether it's in jobs, relationships, health problems, school, trying to lose weight, church, anything. Sometimes we just don't see the light at the end of that tunnel, and we'd rather just quit the fight. And I am pretty sure that 99.9% of the people listening to this have been at that point at some time in their life. Many years ago, there was a man in Kentucky who retired from the Postal Service. He was sitting on his front porch one morning when his first Social Security check arrived, and he looked at it and he got to thinking. He's like, "Man, this is all that I have to look forward to anymore." And it frustrated him, because he put in a long, hard career and has nothing to show for it but this measly check. Was it really worth all the work? Well, he sat down and he made a list of his blessings and the good things that he had going on for him. Included in that list was his mother's recipe for chicken. It included 11 herbs and spices, and he was the only one in the world that knew that recipe anymore. So he went to a nearby restaurant and asked if he could cook the chicken for him, and they said yes. And pretty soon it became the most famous restaurant, and the most famous item in the restaurant. So what's he do? He opened up his own restaurant chain, and he called it Kentucky Fried Chicken. And the rest is history. Harlan Sanders was tired and frustrated, but he had refused to give up. There is a health problem running kind of rampant in the world today, and it's fairly contagious, and it's called the disease of discouragement. Discouragement is defined as the feelings of despair in the face of obstacles. It's when you're just tired of giving forth the effort and you're ready to call it quits. No, we've all been there. If we're all honest, we've all been there. We've been battling for a long time. Um, the book of Nehemiah is a great story about both the causes and the cures for discouragement. Many years earlier in the history of Israel, the walls of Jerusalem had been destroyed and people were now defenseless and vulnerable to the enemies. Um, and Nehemiah was called to use the people, lead the people, and rebuild those walls. But it seemed like an impossible task, and the morale of the people was very low, and they were discouraged, and they couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel either. We're gonna look at the story a little bit, and we're gonna discover the cause of their discouragement. One of them in verse 10 was fatigue. It said, "The strength of the laborers is giving out." Um, when you're physically tired and worn down, it is almost impossible to be emotionally and spiritually up. So, when you're fatigued and you're tired and you're run down, the best thing to do is lay down and get some sleep, take a nap. Because fatigue in itself has a way of leading to discouragement, so it's really important that we get the proper amount of rest. It usually occurs when you're halfway through whatever it is you're trying to do, and you just don't feel like you're gonna make it. But a lot of people get tired and wondered if we should even try to continue, and that's why a lot of people never finish what they start. But get the rest you need, and that will help solve part of that problem. Another cause is frustration. In verse 10 again it says, "There's so much rubble." When they tried to rebuild the wall, they found that there was a lot of litter and debris and trash lying around in the way. There was broken bricks and mortar and was getting there, and they got frustrated. Yeah, if anybody's ever rebuilt a house or any kind of building, you know the frustration of the fact that all the rubble that lies in the way. Whether it's at home or at work or in your personal life, it seems like that never goes away. You accomplish something and then there's another one to be done, and before long you're feeling irritated and irritable and frustrated. You can't avoid the rubble, but you can learn to recognize it and learn what to do with it. Or else you're never going to reach your goal. Rubble is anything in your life that keeps you from accomplishing your goals. You have made New Year's resolutions to read your Bible more often, but you find that there's too much noise, the kids are too demanding, there's not enough time in the day. You might have made a New Year's resolution to lose weight, but there's so many snacks around the house. It just doesn't seem to be losing fast enough, so you give up. Many different reasons and things that can distract you. And that's the rubble that frustrates and discourages you until you do something about it. The third thing is failure. It says in verse 10, "Well, we cannot rebuild the wall." Well, they didn't meet their deadline of finishing the wall, so they got discouraged and ready to give up because they felt that they had failed. Their confidence was shot, and they lost heart. They lost their enthusiasm, and they gave up because they failed to accomplish their goal. And failure, yes, is a major part of being discouraged. So, it's like today's society. Just about the time you think you're gonna make ends meet and get on your feet, something else happens. Some other doctor bill or some other finance issue comes up, some other emergency. So you feel like you failed yet again. Uh, you blame yourself or you blame somebody else. Um, you've got to learn how to win in life and learn how to get back on the horse after it's bucked you off, basically. Um, John Wayne once said, "Courage is being scared to death but saddling up again anyway." Uh, Successful people see failure as an end, not as an end, but only as a temporary setback. The death of Jesus on the cross, that wasn't a failure. It was only a 3-day setback. Never give up when you failed. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us. And then we have fear in verse 11. Also our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and will kill them and put an end to their work. And into verse 12, the Jewish people were discouraged because of their fear. In verse 12, it says, wherever you turn, they will attack us. So fear really causes us to be discouraged. Look at your life today. What are your fears? Is it failure, rejection, health problems, criticism, discouragement? Do you think that all you can do is pack your bags and leave? You can do that, but when you do that, the fear and the discouragement are right behind you. They're going to follow you. But let's look at some of the cures here. Number one, we need to reset the body. If you read the whole chapter of Nehemiah, it actually gives people some holiday. Nehemiah actually gives people holidays. He gives them time off to get the rest that they need, which is something that we've already covered. Jesus often got away by himself to get the rest that he needed. In our busy schedules, we make the excuse that, well, I don't have time to get rest. Well, if you can't make time to rest now, you'll find time to rest in a hospital later on. Psalms 127:2 says, in vain you rise early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. God made our body to work, but he also created it to rest in order to do the work that's required. So it was so important, actually, that he made it one of the 10 Commandments that on the seventh day is set aside for rest. Reorganize your life. In verse 13 it said, therefore I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. He didn't give up on the goal, Nehemiah. He just reorganized the people and put them in their proper places. And when you get discouraged, it doesn't mean give up. It doesn't mean you're doing things wrong. It means go after your dreams in a different way. So if you're in debt, reorganize. If you want to lose weight, reorganize your eating patterns or your exercise patterns. If you're overcommitted, reorganize your time. To beat discouragement doesn't mean you give up and quit. It simply means reorganize to do things differently. If you notice, as I stated earlier, Nehemiah grouped them by families. Because we need each other in our homes and at church. Throughout the Bible, we hear the phrase one another. God knows we need each other to keep from getting discouraged. We're told to love one another, encourage one another, serve one another, pray for one another. We need the support of our families at home and at church in order to keep from getting discouraged. If you're feeling discouraged today, reorganize. Make some changes. Find some support from your family or your friends at church or whomever you find that from. And number 3, remember the Lord. In verse 14, he said, "Don't be afraid. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome." A lot of times when we get discouraged and worn out, we have a tendency to forget God, but we can't do that. We have to get reconnected and recharged with God. When we get discouraged, we need to get connected to the source. And when we're discouraged, we have our eyes on the problems and off the Lord. So we need to remember our source for living in times of discouragement and get reconnected. A, remember God's faithfulness to you in the past. B, remember His closeness to you in the present. C, remember His power for you in the future. When feeling discouraged, get your mind off the problem on the Lord and remember who He is and all He's done. The best way to do that is to make time to spend time in His Word. In Psalms 119:25, "I am laid low in the dust. Preserve my life according to your word." Over and over again throughout the Bible, God tells us to be encouraged. He assures us of His presence and His faithfulness. And sometimes we forget that until we read it ourselves once again. And the fourth thing is to resist discouragement. In verse 14, Nehemiah said to fight for your family and your home. Don't give up. Don't roll over. Don't play dead. Get in the battle. Fight for what's important to you. Resist the discouragement. Keeping us discouraged is one of Satan's biggest weapons against us. And the Bible reminds us that we're not fighting against those things that are physical, but against the spiritual forces. Satan knows that if you and I are discouraged, that he's won the battle because we're not going to feel like doing anything godly in our lives. So we have to make the choice mentally every day to resist discouragement and just continue to fight. Discouragement is always a choice. It's not just a feeling. You choose to stay on the ground or get back up on that horse. But know that if you're on the ground, Satan's happy. Resist the discouragement in your life and fight for your families and your homes. The most important thing to do when feeling discouraged is simply to pray. David felt discouraged throughout the Psalms, and he told God how he felt. When's the last time that you really honestly told God how you felt? He wants to hear from you. He doesn't care whether you're angry, depressed, sad, frustrated, discouraged. He just wants to hear from you. Put all your eggs in a basket. Put every issue, every problem, everything you have, and go to God with it and give Him that basket. So once again, let go and let God.